At Salt Fork State Park, there's all kinds of activities for visitors. With the size of this park being 20,000 acres and 3,000 acres of water, almost any outdoor activity you can imagine is available here. Whether it's camping, hiking, fishing, hunting. I think the most convincing thing about Salt Fork is the fact that it's such a relaxed, laid-back atmosphere. You can come and get away from the hectic part of your life for a while.
Yeah, it was, the first one was 5 years ago. I had came down, it was my first time ever, it was over at the group camp out. It was my first time ever staying overnight at Salt Fork. If you know where the group camp is, you pull in, there's that roundabout, but there's that big back left corner, and then there's the right. My tent was back there on the right, and I had a citronella candle that I didn't light, so there was no fire in front of my tent. Well, I was with the Sosby at the time. I was at their camp out, and we were doing the meeting. The meeting was over. I was coming back to my tent, and it looked like there was a fire in front of my tent. And I'm sitting there going, I had no fire lit, and I had no candle lit. Well, I seen it and went around and asked everybody, you know, who left the citronella candle. I wanted to thank them. Nobody left it. So it was still lit, and I went to bed. And I woke up to hearing some footsteps, and I knew what these footsteps were. They weren't hooves, they were actual two-legged animal walking. And I thought maybe it's someone walking around the tent, make sure I'm okay. It's my first time. Well, I'm laying there, and I had the zipper unzipped so you could see outside the window. And I looked away and I looked back, and you know them toys that kids have that you push your hand in and it kind of shows in? A face. And this face, it had the nose was kind of smushed, and hair all the way around its face. You could see the lips and the eyes and stuff, and it peered in. And I sneezed, and it went, It was exactly what it did. And I just paused. A few minutes went by, and on all fours, it crawled beside my tent. You could still see it with the fire. And as it got back to the back part of my tent, it stood up.
Can you describe the way it crawled? How did it crawl?
It was like a little 2-year-old crawling on its hands and knees. It was really weird because I'm like sitting there going, but the way its head was, it was kind of turned like it was keeping an eye on what I was doing in the tent. And like I said, as it got to the back of the tent, it stood up. Now, I couldn't tell you exactly how tall it was, but I'm 6'4", and it was taller than me. And as it came around, all of a sudden I felt this on the top of my head. And I'm going, okay. Well, I just laid there, and all of a sudden you could hear it walk. And my immediate reaction was, I need to find out what that was. Got out, looked around, it was long gone. Now that was my first sighting.
What time is it when you see the face? Do you know like what time of night?
It was about around 12 o'clock.
Okay. Describe what did the eyes look like? Could you see the eyes?
Yeah, they were brown. And I mean, they were like a little bit bigger. You could see where you had the brown, then you had a little bit of the white, and you could see like the pupil. And it didn't have hair like it had the eyebrow. But the thing is the ridge top didn't have hair, but you could see where it had a conical head. My second sighting that I had in Salt Fork, I was walking, and this is actually, I got kind of pushed. and I have the doctor's reports and everything. A lady had lost her. We had went to the beach, and we were at group camp again, but with a different group. And I came walking, or she lost her towel, so I went up the trail and I took my flashlight. And as I'm walking up the trail, I look right and I see something little go across, but you could see it was on two legs. Well, I went to turn around and I'm like, if there's a little one, where's mom and dad? I got to looking straight up the trail, and when I went to turn to the right, and I was to the farthest part of that right of that path, I had a huge hand hit me here and a forearm here, and I literally lifted 2 feet up off the ground and hit a tree, and my flashlight was 6 feet from me, and I had a partial rotator cuff tear from that event.
Here in Ohio, 32 counties are actually Appalachian, both socioeconomically, geographically, and geologically. So these hills that you see around are part of the Appalachian region, the same Appalachians that go all the way down into Georgia and all the way up into Maine. This is part of that region. So we have really rugged terrains, deep valleys, what we call hollers around here. That contributes really heavily to the biodiversity. Most of those valleys and ravines have their own little microclimate. So we have a really heavily vegetative biodiversity here.
Okay, and then my other question that I had is, when I first got into this, I'm sure you've experienced this, but when you're first coming into the Bigfoot world, you realize real quickly that there's like a prevalence of people taking native lore or mythology or whatever and trying to sort of superimpose Bigfoot over it. Have you seen any evidence of Bigfoot in native lore locally here in Ohio?
Not locally.
Yeah.
Not locally. Ohio sort of has, it's a really scant history of it. That said, the Eastern Shawnee in Oklahoma, which the Eastern Shawnee in Oklahoma came from Ohio, there's some lore out there, but I'm not an expert on it.
Yeah.
So I know that there is actually some ledger art. If you're familiar with ledger art, there's some ledger art of what appears to be like a Sasquatch, and I think that's Eastern Shawnee, but I am not an expert on that. I know that a lot of people, they do try to, because we have some like water cat mythology from Ohio, and those things, and some people will actually try to shoehorn Bigfoot into even some of that. Of course, like there's the stone giant, stuff, but it's not, it's not quite the same. So
okay, and then the other question I had is about how often you're actually told of experience. Like how often do people approach you on any given week or month with their encounters?
So I've never had anybody come in with like sticks in their hair saying like, my God, I just saw a Bigfoot. I do on a semi-regular basis get approached with people who have had an encounter in the past,
right,
and want to share their stories. So I would say a safe estimate is a few times a month.
Okay.
People come in and want to tell their story. Obviously it spikes when we have a Bigfoot event, but I've probably heard 4 of them today. So it spikes, but probably a couple of times a month I'll have people who come in and look at a display and say, like, I saw one X number of years ago, but I've never had anybody stumble in and go, my God, I just saw a Bigfoot.
Yeah. It is Friday. Tomorrow is the Ohio Bigfoot Conference, and it's worth noting that we are in Salt Fork State Park, the largest state park in the state of Ohio, 18,000 acres, which is comparable to Cuyahoga Valley National Park, which we just recently visited. But this is our first year back for the Ohio Bigfoot Conference since 2015, when we premiered Minerva Monster, and it's been interesting so far, to say the least. We've had some really good discussions with people, and, you know, it's been, I mean, for those that don't know how a Bigfoot conference works, it is one of the more community-driven conferences you'll go to, in that it's as much about interacting with other Bigfooters as it is listening to lectures or whatever. So it's a unique conference in that sense, in that I feel like it's driven by this, you know, fellowship between Bigfoot enthusiasts. And that's something that's lacking in the community and kind of cool about it. Having said that, the conference has been at the center of a lot of controversy, especially over the last decade since I was here. And there's, you know, if you're from the state of Ohio, you will notice who is lacking, who is missing from these conferences that take place in Ohio, and then you can kind of put the pieces together about who's mad at who, and the divisiveness of the community is on display as well. But, you know, I've always been a big fan of the fact that, you know, like last night there was a big party at the cabin next to ours, and it was not just speakers, but, you know, attendees were invited, and everybody was invited, and they all just hung out and talked about Bigfoot for a long time. So that's a cool aspect to this that you don't see in a lot of places. But my goal for the next couple days is to meet as many people as I can, and talk to people about their experiences in Salt Fork State Park, and learn a little bit about the Bigfoot history of what I used to jokingly refer to as the Bigfoot Mecca of the world. So that's what we're here for. When did you start coming down?
I have no idea.
Really?
As I get older, my time is very, very elastic.
Yeah.
And my sense of time is very elastic, and it seems like I've been coming here forever. You'd have to ask Mark Dorth the first time I was here. I really have no idea, but it's got to have been 2012 or something,
Really?
or 10 or 14. I don't know, a long time.
You've Bigfooted all over the world, like literally around the world.
Yeah.
What stands out to you about like Salt Fork or the surrounding area?
Well, Salt Fork is kind of like Bluff Creek. It has the mythology associated with it. There's
Yeah.
really nothing special about Salt Fork. I hate to say it, but it's just a state park in the middle of great habitat, and the state park has kind of embraced it. That's the special thing about it, is that the lodge here and the park in general has like welcomed the Bigfoot thing with the conference especially, and allowed us to film here when we're on Finding Bigfoot and that sort of thing. But, you know, between the park and inside the park and outside the park and 30 miles that way, there's not a big difference. Southeast Ohio is just good. There's a lot of good habitat here, and a lot of Bigfoot researchers willing to take sighting reports, so we hear about a lot of stuff here.
Have you had anything that you can remember happen to you in the park while researching?
Yeah,
you guys filmed.
We did.
Yeah,
we
like
filmed here.
Yeah,
we filmed here at least twice. I know that we did a special town hall here one time with over 300 people, and we talked to every single person there.
Yeah.
That took a very long time. But I've certainly done night ops here a few times. I've heard a couple knocks here before. A couple years ago, somebody who came to the conference claimed to have seen a Sasquatch the day before at a location. So I went out there to investigate, found a maybe print, maybe. But also while we were out there, heard a daytime knock from a very odd place. So I mean, might have been a Sasquatch, might not have been. So I've had a few things, nothing I could really hang my hat on, so to speak, but some definite maybes, and you know, that's always encouraging.
There's something different about Salt Fork. At first glance, it's just another state park. Rolling hills, thick woods, and a man-made lake that stretches out like a calm mirror in the middle of southeastern Ohio. But the deeper you go, the quieter it gets. Trees crowd the trail edges, fog settles early, and even during the daytime, the woods here carry a weight to them, like they're holding something back. Salt Fork isn't remote by any means, but it feels isolated. Maybe that's part of what makes it such fertile ground for the strange. If you've heard of Bigfoot in Ohio, chances are you've heard the name Salt Fork. It's one of the most active hotspots in the state, maybe in the entire eastern U.S. Reports have been coming out of these woods for decades. hikers hearing heavy footfalls pacing them through the trees, campers walking up to find large prints around their tents, strange howls breaking the silence of a still night. Some of the encounters are dramatic, close, personal, unforgettable. Others are quieter, a shadow across a ridge, a dark shape in the tree line that never quite steps into view. No one's cataloged every sighting, but estimates put the number in the hundreds, maybe more. And not all of them come from tourists or first-timers. Some of the most compelling reports come from locals, folks who know the land and don't scare easy. People from nearby towns like Cambridge, just a few miles down the road, have their own stories. Out there, sightings don't just happen in the park, they happen in backyards, along country roads, even just outside town, where the woods press right up against the edge of the neighborhoods. Salt Fork's connection to Bigfoot isn't just about sightings. It's become something bigger. For years, the park has played host to the Ohio Bigfoot Conference, an annual gathering of researchers, eyewitnesses, and the curious. It's one of the largest events of its kind in the country. People travel from all over just to walk these trails, to listen to others share their stories, or maybe to have their own. And behind much of that, going back to the earliest days, is Don Keating. Don was documenting Bigfoot encounters in Salt Fork long before it became a conference hub, or a household name in the cryptid world. He spent years collecting reports, walking the trails, and putting together newsletters filled with witness accounts. Long before it was easy to talk about this stuff, Don was out here listening, asking questions, and helping people put their experiences into words. Do you think there are like a large, or personally I don't think there's much going on there today, but
no.
Was there a lot of
Encounters and stuff like that? Yeah, oh yeah. At Salt Fork State Park they had sightings back in 1972 when the park opened. In fact, in 1972, when the lodge opened, in 72 they had 4 sightings within 2 weeks of each other. I mean, within a 2-week time frame, there were 4 sightings. And one of them was one of the rangers looking out one of the ranger office's windows and seeing this thing looking straight in at him. Now you got to remember, this is right after Salt Fork Lodge opened. So there were 4 reports. Number 5 came as a result of the ranger radioing down to the main ranger station, and he told the guy in the ranger station, he said, by the way, the last report I just checked, the people who've seen it claimed that the creature is walking in your direction. Well, from point A to point B, it's quite a distance, and it could go anywhere between those 2 locations, so he wasn't that concerned about it. And he was in the radio room, the main ranger station. He's standing there at a table, which the radio is sitting on, and there's a window right above where the radio is, and he had a feeling that something was watching him. So he just looks up towards the window, and for the few seconds that he's seen it before he instinctively swung at it, like get out of here, he got a very good look at the face of the thing. And the one thing that he mentioned was the fact that he could barely see the eyes, but what he seen was that they were all black. And he swung at it, and his hand went through the window. And as a result of that, he ended up at the local hospital with close to 100 stitches. And I talked to him on the phone twice, and he saw it so close he was able to give fantastic description of what the face and everything looked like. And ever since then, not on a regular basis. If it was on a regular basis, I'd be more suspicious of it. But from 1972 all the way up until, I don't know, a couple of years ago or last year, and like I say, I'm out of it, so I haven't got my finger on the pulse. But yeah, there have been a number of sightings, a number of track discoveries, and a number of unusual incidents like heavy footfalls or screams in the forest at night or something like that. So yeah, Salt Fork has a long history. And I bet if you could dig back into the local history from the 1960s, 50s, etc., from the local people before it was even made into a park because it's a man-made lake, I bet there's a history of reports of sightings long before that.
One very dramatic example would be that of Tom Pretty. This is a story that was given to Doug Waller, and this happened in 2014. Tom Pretty would bring firewood to the camping areas of Salt Fork State Park, and every time he would go deliver that wood, he would go by a particular creek near the campground. It's on a location near Palmer Road in Salt Fork, and thought that'd be a great place to fish. So finally, he remembered to bring his pole and his other equipment so he could fish at that spot. So he and a companion decided we're going to fish there on this day. So it's the middle of the day, and they've got their lines in the water, and they start to hear something on the other side of the creek where they're fishing. And what they observe is something large and dark, apparently on all fours, approaching through the tall grass towards them, towards the creek, which was between them and this figure. And what pops out first of the tall grass is a very large dark head, followed by a human-like dark hair-covered figure crawling on all fours towards the water. And staying in that position, that figure begins to take a very long drink from the water. And once it's sated its thirst, it stands up on two legs to the height of about 7 feet tall, kind of stretches and looks around. And Pretty and his companion are kind of holding their breath in a somewhat concealed place. They can see this figure very clearly at a distance that they estimate of no more than 25 feet. Pretty's companion coughs, and as soon as he coughs, the figure sort of swivels and locks eyes with the two of them. And once it recognizes that they are there, it bluff charges up to the creek's edge. It lets out this enormous scream and yell. And once it's done that, it seems like it's fairly satisfied with its own bluff charge. It turns around, goes back into the tall grass, drops down on all fours, and crawls away. And Pretty turns around to kind of look at his companion, and I'd probably give him the evil eye for letting out that cough. He's gone. He's already back to the truck and has locked himself in. But that's just one example, I think, of a water-based sighting, and that's fairly standard in Ohio sightings, where there would be not only water close by, but it factors into the report in some way.
As strange as it sounds, Salt Fork's connection to Bigfoot isn't just modern. Long before it was a park, before there were cabins or hiking trails or boat launches, this land belonged to someone else. For centuries, it was home to native peoples, tribes like the Shawnee, the Delaware, and the Mingo. The land back then was different, but the hills were here, the forests, the silence. At one point, I started digging into whether any of the tribes who lived here might have had legends that sounded like Bigfoot. You hear about that kind of thing out west, the wild men of the woods, the stone giants. But here in Ohio, it was harder to pin down. Most of the stories I found were vague. Some mentioned tall figures in the forests, or spirits that watched from the shadows, but nothing that clearly lined up with the creature we call Bigfoot today. Maybe those stories were lost over time, or maybe we're just not hearing them the way they were meant to be told. Still, it says something that the people who lived closest to the land, the ones who depended on it, believed it was filled with spirits and unseen forces. They treated these hills with caution, with reverence, and maybe that mindset never really left. Today, the person who probably knows this land better than anyone is John Hickenbottom. He's a naturalist with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, and he spent years walking the same trails people say they've had encounters on. He teaches about the wildlife, the ecosystem, the history. But he's also heard the stories, the ones about something out there that doesn't quite fit. And like a lot of folks who spent time in these woods, he's learned not to dismiss them too quickly.
So initially the lake was constructed. It was meant to be a county reservoir, right? And then the ODNR took it over. And
What year was it?
The dam was finished in 1968. Okay. Yeah, so the dam was actually finished in 1968. By that point, the ODNR had kind of stepped in and taken it over as a park. Over 200 farms make up the park. So those folks were bought out by the ODNR. The land was taken over and allowed to regenerate. There were whole towns here. There's a town right at the south end of the park called Brady that doesn't exist anymore. You can find foundations of it, you know.
Are there any buildings that are underwater?
Yeah, yeah. Well, foundations. There's not. The lake's not terribly deep, so there are foundations. And if the lake's at winter pool, and occasionally you can see those foundations. There are old bridges and stuff too. The park itself opened around 1970. By 1972, everything was up and running.
Yeah.
It's the biggest park in the state.
How many? It's 18,000.
Yeah, it's a little over 17,000 land acres, and then about 3,000 water acres, just under 3,000.
Interesting, because it's like the same size as Cuyahoga Valley.
Yeah,
right? Isn't
right.
Cuyahoga
Yeah, it's
Valley
roughly
like
the same
18?
size. Yeah. So it's the biggest park the biggest actual state park in the state.
Yeah, it's a good sized state park.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I was a kid, I remember you would hear about it, but it was all Bigfoot. I mean, even in the 90s.
Right, even in the 90s.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up about 9.5 miles from here.
Okay.
In a place called Kipling, outside of Cambridge.
Yeah. Did you, when you were a kid, did you hear anything about Bigfoot?
Yeah. But it was always kind of when I was a kid, it was always kind of a joke. Like it was what your goofy neighbor did, you know what I mean? Yeah, I mean, I remember, campouts here where it was kind of Bigfoot themed when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But again, it was kind of a goof, not really a serious thing. And my dad had friends who claimed that they'd heard and seen things out here. And I grew up hunting and fishing out here. I never saw anything growing up.
Yeah.
Really, the experiences that I've had have been the last 10 years. Anything that I've experienced out here. But yeah, I mean, you heard about it. And of course, Don Keating had his conference in Newcomerstown for years and years and years.
Yeah.
And that was, that would always make the local paper.
Yeah. That's when I was a kid,
right. It was
Times Reporter always.
Yeah, it would always make the local paper and stuff down here. I even remember going to it with, I don't know, a scout group or something at one point. Yeah, when I was a kid. Once the shows came here, Monster Quest and Finding Bigfoot, then it really snowballed. But after that, things really expanded, and then I got back here. I was the naturalist here in 2012 and 2013, right after that, and kind of, it was the second year that the conference was held here. So it was really starting to get big. So yeah, I mean, I was around for part of that.
What did you make of the Bigfoot top? Because you grew up aware of it, but it was kind of a joke.
Yeah.
I'm assuming we're probably similar in some ways when it comes to this stuff.
Right.
So, like, how did you, when you first started hearing about it here, when you were working here, what did you think?
I didn't really want to mess with it when I first, I had a pretty good job up north, not exactly what I wanted to do. So I jumped ship to come down here back to my home turf to work as a seasonal naturalist. And I get back here thinking I'm going to teach people about snakes and turtles and bugs and plants, and every person wants to talk about Bigfoot, But yeah, I did kind of come around a couple of things, interacting with people here, like the legit people who never thought about Bigfoot a day in their life. They saw something and it altered the way they saw everything else.
And
because
they usually don't want to talk about it.
Right, because they don't want to talk about it. And that's the, and that's what fascinates me, is you have folks who had, an experience, who never thought about Bigfoot, and then in a split second, something that they never considered real is very, very real.
Right.
And that's a hard reality check, when you have like something that you've never thought a day in your life about, all of a sudden is very real. One of the sort of turning points in me, at least being open to the idea of like getting into the whole subject, was in 2018. In 2018, I was out. My wife's from Canton, Massillon, and when we started dating, I'd go up there and we'd go see live music and do things like that. But when she would come down here, I'd take her squirrel hunting, because that's Appalachia, and that's how you date. You know what I mean? Like, so we were out squirrel hunting, and heard this long howl, right? And you could feel it. And she looked at me and she's like, "Well, what is that?" And I said, "That is about that time. We should, I don't know what that is. Let's get, So we got back in the car, and she's like, "You two made animal noises, and it's not a coyote." And I said, "Hey, look up the Ohio howl." and she played it. And she's like, "Oh, that sounds exactly like what we heard." And she said, "What is that?" And I said, "Well, allegedly it's Bigfoot." Now, the one caveat to that is this is Salt Fork.
Yeah.
I have got no way of knowing that there wasn't some guy with a Bluetooth speaker, you know, sound blasting the same recording that we're listening to back at the car. You know what I mean? I've got no way of knowing that. I have no way of knowing that. But after that, I had started getting to know some of the researchers, and we've gone through kind of waves of researchers here, but we had a core that had kind of remained pretty steady. They're still around, you know, they still help out a ton. So I started talking to those guys more and getting to know them, and you know, getting the books, getting like like the John Green book, you know, and reading those, and was like, oh, you know, like that was the real turning point, is when I started reading the books and stuff, and I was like, wow, you know, here I'm kind of crapping on all this because it's not science, but a lot of these guys were doing pretty real science.
Hickenbottom didn't set out to believe in Bigfoot, but after years of working these trails, hearing the stories firsthand, he started to admit something strange might be happening out here. He's not claiming proof, just that there are moments when the forest feels different, and sometimes that's enough to make you pay attention. Esteban Sarmiento sees it from a different angle. As a primatologist, he approaches the subject with skepticism. He doesn't believe we've found solid evidence that a creature like Bigfoot exists, but he also understands the value in looking. For him, the search itself, the act of exploring, questioning, observing, has scientific merit. As he said before, if something unknown is out there, this is the kind of place it would be. Remote, wild, untouched in just the right ways. Well, you've been into this since at least the early 2000s.
Yeah, since the early 2000s.
When
it's not a full time.
No, I know. But I'm curious, let's say there's like a scale of possibility that these things are real. You know, 0 to 100%. Where are you at on the scale?
I want to explain that.
Yeah.
My desire
Yeah.
is for the thing to exist,
Right.
because it'd be fascinating.
Yeah.
Now, as far as my mind is made to prove things or disprove things. It's not made to believe and not believe.
Yeah.
So my mind is like that. So I'm always weighing things. Doesn't mean that my weights are accurate, but if I think it was 1969 that they had the Bigfoot film,
Yeah.
and since 1969, in spite of cameras, trail cameras, phone cameras that are much, much better, you know, video, there's never been a better film than the Willow Creek.
Yeah.
And so it makes you think, well, maybe this thing existed at one time or it doesn't exist anymore. Maybe this thing is a fake. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, there's a lot of things with Bigfoot, you know, whether it's happenstance or not, that are biogeographically credible. You know, similar animals are described in Asia as in North America, and, you know, they're really in the area of the Bering Bridge, so that they probably crossed over, or it gives you the idea that something like that happens. And there's a lot of eyewitnesses accounts. So my question is, okay, if it's not Bigfoot that exists as a reality, what is it that they're seeing? And I think we have clues to that. So that would be like an alternate hypothesis. Bigfoot might not be, might be some human construct from the signals that they get, but it could be another animal that's giving them those signals. And there is a number of sightings where one person sees one thing and another sees something else.
That's true, yeah.
And one of the things that's common is one person sees Bigfoot, the other person sees a coyote or a wolf. And you know about eye shine, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so carnivores have eye shine. Like some of the herbivores have eye shine that they eat at night. But primates don't. I think there's one primate, Aotus from South America, that has some, right? But this animal has more of a glow, but not as much as some of those carnivores where the eyes come out like either greenish or, you know, bright red, or, you know, would actually glow back at you and you see a light. And it's always interesting that sometimes these people say they see Bigfoot and they see an eye shine. And that's one of those things that it's not a possibility. So maybe they're seeing another animal and they're interpreting it to be Bigfoot.
Interesting.
I mean, I think that, we haven't found the animal yet.
Yeah.
So we have to have it just as much as Bigfoot can be a reality. We also have to be open to the possibility that it's not.
Right. Yeah.
Either of those,
Right.
Okay, if you could give me your name and just give me your name.
I'm Sonia Horseman.
Okay, awesome. Can you tell us your experience that happened here?
Yes, I remember it very well. I was up in room 325. I'm in the Salt Fork State Park Lodge, and I was praying on the balcony because I just found out a friend of mine died. So I was out there praying, and I looked out and I saw very dark, very black, a Sasquatch walk from right to left in the clearing that I saw, the clearing view that I had, and it was hunched over, it was jet black, it was skinny, and that was on May 6th, 2018, here in the lodge during a conference. I burst out of the lodge, ran down the hall, ran into Hunter Brio and Robert Robertson and April Tate and all these people, and we went running out towards the area, and on the way back, Crystal and her daughter were coming up the path, and she saw it. She seen it cross the path on all fours. The interesting thing about it was the animals were panicking. The deer were panicking, the bunnies, the deer were panicking, and she was taking videos, and then she stopped taking a video and it ran across the path. So I interviewed her, and I do have a video of an interview of her, and she's like, how big are the bears here? But I saw it, and I was very emotional over it, because they say don't report something you see at a conference, but I saw it. I saw it, and it was big. So the next day I had Abe, who's 6 foot tall, go to the area. We had our phones on, and he walked through the area where I saw it, and he walked like 6 steps. This thing walked 2 steps, so it was very large. So that's my story. And I actually went back to the chair in room 325 out on the, and I actually outlined where the chair was sitting so to make sure I had the right exact angle, so when we did the investigation. So Abe came and helped me. We didn't find any tracks. We didn't find anything. The only significant thing that happened was when we were all converging on the woods, something very large ran obviously to the end of the peninsula here by the lodge and jumped into the water. We heard a very large splash, and it wasn't coming from the marina, it was coming from over here on this side of the lodge. So I believe I saw a Sasquatch in 2018 at Salt Fork State Park. It was jet black, stuck out. And and thank you for letting me tell my story.
Yeah, so one thing that always strikes me when I come down to Salt Fork State Park is how similar it is to the area where I grew up in Bolivar, which makes sense. Bolivar's only like, geographically, it's 20 miles from here. But the dense undergrowth in the woods is prototypical eastern, southern Ohio, southeastern Ohio. It is, there could be something in the brush behind us watching us, and you'd never have a clue just because of how thick it is down here. But that has always been one of the standouts about the park to me. But the big question, and this comes up a lot even in some of the interviews we've conducted, there are so many people that come here to Salt Fork specifically to look for Bigfoot that you would think that that kind of activity, the number of people doing wood knocks and yells in the woods, would eventually have an impact on the presence of Bigfoots. So what I've been doing is asking people that come down here regularly where they have activity in the park. And what I've come to find is that the activity isn't happening anywhere around the lodge. It's not happening around the cabins. The activity is taking place on the periphery of the park. And so, so you got to get out of, you kind of have to get out of the park. There's a road called Freedom Road where you have to exit the park and then get on Freedom Road, and Freedom Road will take you back into the park, but it's a disconnected part of the park. Apparently, that's where a lot of the activity is taking place today. But one thing about the park that's really cool is, like, right now we're in the middle of nowhere. There's no one around us. We took a dirt road to get up here. I had to go into 4-wheel drive, and there are no cars back here. There's no people anywhere near us. And so when you're talking 18,000 acres with this massive lake kind of cutting its way through the park as well, there are plenty of places to get within the park that you can access where there aren't going to be other people. And I think places like this where we are right now could also be a good place to, potentially have these things roaming around, because there's no one back here. But like sort of the places that people connect with Bigfoot within the park, your Bigfoot Ridge specifically, there's probably not a lot of Bigfoots actually at Bigfoot Ridge. That's what I've come to find. Are there any of those stories that you were told that stand out? Like something you were told?
Yeah, I mean, there are quite a few. I've always told people, like, if I would ever see Bigfoot, I would never tell a soul. Not because I think anyone would think I'm crazy. Everyone knows when I'm crazy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It would be because we don't treat things with respect. And that's why a person who has a mushroom patch keeps their mushroom patch secret. You know what I mean? If I'd ever see one, I'd keep it secret just so nobody would go mess around wherever I saw it. Because I respect wildlife that way. But one of the stories, and I don't really have permission to give like names and stuff. You know what I mean? Yeah. But a few years back, I was kind of getting relatively well known with the videos, and I'd been speaking to podcasters and stuff. And a couple came to the park, and they looked at. I've got a map. I had a map at my old nature center that had pins, and I didn't vet every single pin. You know what I mean? It was if somebody had a sighting, they can stick a pin there. I've got no way of vetting every single one. But they were looking at it, and they were probably in their early 40s. And the gentleman was from the far southern part of Ohio. And his wife kind of did one of those, like, hey, tell him he's the Bigfoot guy here. Like, tell him what tell him your thing. And I was like, hey, like, what's your story? Because that's one of the things that I've had to learn how to do also with this subject, is to go, wow, interesting, a lot. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, oh wow, that's interesting. And so I'm like, yeah, like, tell me I'd love to hear it. I love hearing these stories. Yeah. And he said when he was a kid, he grew up in far southern Ohio, like we're talking the Point, down there. That's a historically depressed area, and they were very, very poor, abject poverty, and he lived in a kind of a trailer that somebody had kind of told his dad, like, oh, if you can move it, you can have it, so his dad had it moved to someone else's property down in southern Ohio, and I believe the way he put it was, sometimes we could keep the lights on, sometimes we couldn't. He had very distinct memories as a kid of his mom kind of rounding up him and his siblings saying, like, hey, that thing's outside, and hearing something walk and kind of brush and rub against the outside of the trailer, and make a couple of passes and then wander off. And then the guy that owned the land that the trailer was on, he remembers him pulling into the driveway and telling his dad, like, hey, don't let the boys go out in the woods today. I've been on the tractor and that thing's been on the edge of the field watching me all day, And he said he never thought about it. He was a kid. It was one of those things, that thing's out there, and he never thought about it. And it wasn't until he was much older. And they could barely keep the lights on, so they didn't have TV and stuff like that. It wasn't like he was getting inundated with Bigfoot, He was at a friend's house, and Harry and the Hendersons came on TBS or whatever, and he was just talking. He's like, oh, it's that thing, and his friends are like, what the hell are you talking about? Yeah. It's Bigfoot. That's not real. Like, Bigfoot's not real. And he's like, you guys didn't have the thing. He's like, that it's totally real. Like, I saw it. My whole childhood I saw it, And his friends are like, you're nuts, But that's what he said. He says, I never thought about it not being a normal thing. He's like, I thought that everyone around,
it's just part of his life.
and he's like, and it was there. And to me, and the way he told it was just so matter of fact. And it wasn't the over elaborate details that you get sometimes where like, you're telling me you saw a Bigfoot and you know exactly what the temperature was and there, the rustling of the leaves in the fall, like you get these over elaborate stories where you're like, this was just a matter of fact story, and that's the way he put it was like, you can believe me or not, but I grew up with, and it's 100% real.
What about you?
Personally? So I was staying up at group camp once to film a video, and had kind of, I thought it'd be kind of cool to do sort of a like in the camp sort of thing, So I was filming this on my iPad, and I was going to cut it all together, and it worked out marginally well. But while I was up there, I've always been kind of skeptical about wood knocks being actual, wood. I believe that there's a noise out there that's, but there's so few reports of Bigfoot even holding anything, let alone. And I always challenge people, like, find a stick of an appropriate size and that can make that noise. They're not going to blow apart when you. So I think if it exists, I think it's a mechanical noise that they're making with their mouth, or their grizzly bears can snick their teeth together pretty loud. I was up there and I was actually filming, talking about something else. Again, I'm just trying to make enough stuff to cut together and make sort of make sense of like a thing. And it sounded like it was right here, and it sounded like it was right there. So, and I actually got it on video where you can hear it, and I kind of go, and I'm looking into the woods, and and I can't see anything, you know what I mean? Like there's nothing there, but it was, and you can hear it on the video where I'm, and I got the recording of it, like it's right there, and I can't see, there's nothing there, there's no other noises. I didn't smell anything, the woods didn't go quiet. I didn't feel like I was getting watched. And later on that night, I'm actually plugging all my stuff in to kind of recharge all my batteries, my phone, and because I was kind of recording on my phone and my iPad, and I had a headlamp on, and I'm kind of camping in the back of I had a PT Cruiser at the time, so I'm sort of camping out of the back of an old PT Cruiser, and I can hear stuff moving around in the bushes, and I'm like, well, maybe I'll see a cool critter, and I can hear kind of limbs breaking and brush and stuff, so I kind of sneak up over to where this is happening, clear on the other side of the camp, right? And I'm walking quietly, and I have my finger on the button on my headlamp, I'm walking in the dark, but I figure I'll just spotlight whatever it is, and I get kind of right up to the edge of the woods, and about 40 yards behind me is where the other edge of the woods is. This is all an opening, so there's about 40 yards behind me before we get to the other side of the camp. And it sounded like it was just inside the woods there. An identical noise, that identical pop. And I turn around, and as soon as I turn around, whatever I'm sneaking up on just barrels through the brush, right? Now, was that a Bigfoot? Again, I have no evidence that it was. You know what I mean? Other than just being there. And then at that point, like when that happened and it was that identical noise, and I'm back here by myself, and if I approach this wrong, nobody's going to believe that any of this, I'm just going to sound like I'm making it up anyway. It was kind of a long night. And I had something else happen that I never heard of before until a researcher told me. I said at one point I woke up and it was kind of like, hey, when you're camping, you're not always the most comfortable. So I kind of got up and like drank water and, sort of unzipped vents in my sleeping bag and whatever. And heard it sounded like somebody, and I was back there alone. This would have been March of 2021. So our group camp had been closed since October 2019 at that point, and so I was back there by myself, and it sounded like somebody had unzipped a tent. You heard this like bzzz, and I was like, and I told, I was talking about the wood knocks and stuff, and I said, I also got this weird, I said, I'm not sure what it was. I'm like, maybe it was like a northern parula or something just calling in the middle of the night. And I said, but it sounded like somebody unzipped, and they were like, oh, it's the zipper noise. And they got like real excited, and I'm like, oh, the zipper noise, and they're like, oh yeah, there's a zipper noise, and they actually found a couple of recordings of it, and I'm like, oh, that's pretty close, but yeah, they got really.
Who was it that you talked to?
It was Dave Wickham. Right. But I've also told a few other people like, they got this weird zipper noise, and they're like, hey, real excited. I've never heard of a zipper noise until then, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I had this, and it sounded just like a tent, unzipped. So I don't know. It was a interesting night.
Over time, even someone like John Hickenbottom, someone grounded in science and trained to explain the natural world, has come to recognize that Salt Fork holds its share of the unexplained. Whether it's unusual animal behavior, strange sounds in the woods, or encounters that defy easy answers, something about this place leaves a mark on those who spend time here. And for many, that sense of mystery has turned Salt Fork into more than just a state park. It's become a destination. That's part of what led Don Keating to start the Ohio Bigfoot Conference. What began as a small gathering in the early 1990s was his way of bringing together people who had an interest in the phenomenon. Researchers, witnesses, and the simply curious. Don has spent years collecting reports and sharing them through newsletters and presentations, and the conference was a natural extension of that work.
Yeah, Salt Fork did have zero importance to the subject back in 1985. We got thrown out of Salt Fork State Park in '85 by the Rangers. Funny how things changed when they realized that you have a gangbuster of a conference that's going on, and then all of a sudden in 2004 I'm contacted by the gentleman who's one of the top guys at the lodge wanting me to come over and take a look at their facilities and entertain the idea of having a conference there. So the first conference was held there in 2005, and it's been held there every year with the exception of a couple of years in 2012 and 13, I think. They were held in downtown or near downtown Cambridge. But Salt Fork catapulted its way up to being way up there in the ranks of importance as far as state parks in Ohio for Bigfoot stuff.
As the years went on and the conference grew, Don eventually handed over the reins to Mark DeWerth, who continues to organize and run the event to this day. Under Mark's guidance, the Ohio Bigfoot Conference has become one of the most respected Sasquatch-related gatherings in the country, drawing around 1,500 people each year to Salt Fork Lodge. The speaker lineup changes year to year, but always includes a mix of longtime researchers, authors, television personalities, and boots-on-the-ground investigators who spent decades in the field. More than anything, it's the atmosphere that sets it apart. The Ohio Bigfoot Conference feels more intimate than most events of its size. It's built around community, around shared experience. People linger in the lobby after talks, trading stories and phone numbers. Families bring their kids. Evidence is presented not to convince the world, but to keep the discussion alive. And all of it unfolds in the heart of Salt Fork, surrounded by the same forested hills that have given rise to so many of the sightings themselves. It's not just a conference, it's a yearly return to the place where the questions still echo. Is there anything about, because you do a lot of these events too, is there anything about OBC that you think sets it apart from other events?
Yeah, a couple things actually. I think that the quality of speakers, and not just because I speak, don't get me wrong, this isn't a Cliff thing at all. The quality of speakers is always good. You know, he always has a couple. I'm kind of a mainstay, I guess, here. I've been invited back every year. I think I've only missed one since I started coming, and I'm very thankful for Mark for that because it's an enjoyable job. But the quality of other speakers that come in, like Dr. Jeff Meldrum and Esteban, of course, and this year alone is great. You know, I mean, you'll be talking, of course, the great Seth Breedlove and Renee.
Disaster waiting to happen.
But every year there's another great speaker, another person who hasn't really had their voice shared sometimes, like Darby Orcutt was here, I think last year. And the venue is nice. And you know what I appreciate about it is that this is a closed system. You know, there are X number of rooms, X number of chairs available, X number of tables, etc. And it's been that way for a long time. A lot of these other conferences start small, they get big, and they can't handle the size, or sometimes they get venues that are so large. There may be 1,500 people in the audience, but it looks like there's 200 because it's so big. But Mark has a contained space, and he fills it every year, and he knows the situation. And I think that is something, frankly, to be admired.
How many years have you been coming down to the conference?
I believe our first conference was in 2012. It's a funny story. Dave McCullough had called me up and said, "Hey, the Ohio conference is next week. We should go." So I said, "Well, let me look it up." And it was all sold out. And I said, "Well, geez, Dave, it's sold out. There's no tickets, but I'm sure we could scalp some tickets or something." You know, I'm a pretty resourceful guy. So Dax Rushlow tagged along with us, and Squatchachusetts had just kind of been formed then, you know.
Yeah.
And we Ironmanned it out here in the middle of the night with no tickets, no hotel.
Yeah.
And we arrived in town, and we walked in and met Bob Gimlin right here at the gift shop. So kind of, we didn't feel like we were complete strangers here.
Right.
And but it was funny because we had no tickets, and Bill Draginis, bless his soul,
Yeah.
one of our good friends, we miss him a lot. He had a spare ticket, so we had one, and we were trading it to get in and out of some of the lectures. But we had come out with very little funds and very little resources, and I had a brand new box of our Squatchachusetts T-shirts, and Mark didn't have a table for me, so I was bootlegging them up here right here in the lobby, you know. So we had enough money for gas to get home.
Yeah.
And we had a great time, and the rest is kind of history, you know. We've just been coming back. I've missed 2 out of the past 13, 14.
Right.
You know.
Oh, how long have you been coming to OBC?
Actually, this is only my second year coming to the event.
What about it stands out as like making it different from other, because you go to a lot of these events. I've seen you at ours, CryptidCon, I've seen you at, you know, so you're experienced.
Yeah, you know, what I really like about this is there is kind of a little bit more close-knit feel to it. Obviously, due to the size and things, it's a little bit smaller as far as the conference itself goes.
Yeah.
But the recognition, just the community, folks, you know, like I said, second year, but folks I met last year, Scott, hey, how you doing? You know, it's just amazing that you're able to make those connections in this environment.
A lot of like friendships you've made probably over the years.
Tremendous amount of friendships. Just sitting here in the lobby this morning with my friend Cliff and Mike, we got to meet the Olas, and Shelley Covington was here earlier, and Henry May was holding court up here earlier.
Yeah.
So it's a good time to meet people from all over around the country that you may talk to them on a regular basis, but maybe only see them maybe once or twice a year.
Right.
And this is usually the place to do it.
And I asked you this already, but I can't remember. Have you done any Bigfooting in the park?
Never. We went out one time with my Fleer because we thought we were the cool kids on campus. We had one of the big expensive Fleers. Things now outdated, but we drove around the park and all we saw was other people looking for Bigfoot. So we saw a lot of people in the woods and a lot of deer. I think there's just a lot of people here. So if anything's lurking around, I doubt they're going to stick around unless you went farther out.
Yeah.
I don't know my way around here. I know how to get in and out of here. I know how to get to the Walmart. And once you're here, you're pretty much here.
Right. Salt Fork isn't just a place where strange stories are told. It's a place where people come to reconnect with the land, with each other, and sometimes with something just beyond understanding. The park is home to a wide variety of wildlife: deer, foxes, bald eagles, and the kind of rich, layered forest that seems to breathe with its own rhythm. For many, it's simply a place to hike, camp, or sit quietly by the lake. But for others, it's something more. In recent years, Salt Fork has embraced its reputation. Bigfoot signs dot the area. There's a statue near the lodge, and visitors ask about sightings the way they might ask about fishing spots. What started as a quiet effort to document the strange has become something much larger. Each spring, the Bigfoot community returns, drawn together by shared stories, curiosity, and a sense of belonging. And it all started with one person. Don Keating helped turn Salt Fork into a gathering place for the people searching for answers, or at least people willing to ask the questions. That's the legacy he leaves behind. A community, a conversation, and a stretch of forest that, for reasons we still don't fully understand, keeps people looking over their shoulder and coming back.